So my name's Christina. I'm a public health doctor working at the council, and welcome to the Bolder Healthier Youth Champions Cost of Living webinar. Thank you for attending. This webinar will be recorded for those who cannot attend and will be available for future use and reference. There will be 4 webinars in this cost of living series. So in addition to this one, there has also been a communities, a workplace, and a Bolder Healthier Plus webinar which have taken place, and the recordings for those will also be made available. So today's is the Youth Champions webinar, and information from this webinar is intended for use by the Youth Champion strand. However, a lot of the information regarding rising cost of living is transferable to the other strands as well. So what is the cost of living crisis? It's a scary term, and it's a term that we've heard more and more of throughout the last year, and definitely more in the last couple of months. It refers to an ongoing situation in the UK from 2021 onwards. It basically means that the cost of everyday essentials like energy and food are rising faster than average incomes. So this causes anxiety, worry, and uncertainty. And there is a growing gap between what people have and what people actually need for a decent standard of living. So we know that the rising cost of living is affecting and will continue to impact everyone, so children, young people, and their families. The impact on children and young people will vary, of course, as this will largely depend on individual circumstances. Children and young people may experience the impact of rising costs directly, or they may also experience it indirectly through their families, households, friends, and communities. The rising cost of living will impact children and young people in the short, medium, and long term. So, what is going up? Everything seems to be going up. And some of these costs on this slide may not directly affect young people, or they may do, but more likely are indirectly affecting young people through households and support networks experiencing these rising costs. So we presented some of the key costs here. However, this isn't a complete list. There will be many others that we have not presented. So travel is one. So average travel costs have increased by 45%. Um, Rent and mortgages have gone up. So social housing rent has increased by 4.1%. Private rental prices have increased by 3%, and mortgage interest rates continue to rise. Water and energy bills continue to increase. Energy household bills increased by 54% in April and continue to rise. Childcare annual costs have also increased, so this includes nursery places and after school clubs, and 16% increase has been seen between 2018 and 2022 in those costs. So we can think about the greater impact that would have on younger parents. Personal goods and services have also increased, so by 49% per week for things like food, household essentials, drink, and things like that. So we know that our communities are taking action because of these rising costs. Information from the West Midlands, taken from the census 2021, shows that 6 in 10 people are spending less on non-essentials. 5 in 10 people are using less gas and electricity in their homes, which is especially worrying considering we're going into the colder months now. And 5 in 10 people are cutting down on non-essential journeys in their vehicles. So really impacting on social participation, getting to classes, after school clubs, and things like that. 4 in 10 people are spending less on food shopping and essentials, and worryingly, 1 in 10 people are using more credit and exposing themselves to more debt than usual. So bringing the impact back to children and young people, as I said, the impact will be seen in the short and the medium and the long term. So again, not all of the impacts are shown here. There'll be many others, but we thought we'd run through some of them just to kind of present what some of the conversations you might be having with your friends, families, and in your communities. So in the short term, rising costs could result in children and young people going hungry and a lack of nutritious food. Fuel poverty, which means lower access to energy in the household, means that cold and damp living conditions become more common, and that can lead to medical conditions worsening. If a young person is living independently, they may be finding it difficult to manage their budgets, especially if they haven't ever had to do this before. So things like household bills, food and travel, they all become especially difficult at this time. If a young person is living in a household with financial struggles, debt, and housing insecurity, this may also impact their mental health and well-being and general household well-being. Youth services unfortunately face rising costs like any other service or business, despite the increased need that we would arguably see during this time. And young people become more and more concerned and aware of the cost of living crisis, again impacting their mental health and well-being. In the medium term, we might see children and young people giving up on hobbies and interests because of costs. It may be difficult keeping up friendships and socializing, particularly if this is online and phone and internet bills become more expensive or unmanageable. There may be a strain on families, so the parent infant relationship, if a young parent has had a new baby or young child. And again, generally, parental mental health will always have an impact on children and young people. Households may be at risk of forced evictions and homelessness. And as I mentioned, because of fuel poverty, health conditions might worsen. Young people may be making decisions about leaving education for jobs, so that could impact their financial security in the future. And again, in the long term, we're seeing that aspirations around financial independence are changing and more likely for the negative. So, long term unemployment, long term impact on mental health and well-being, and then long term health and social impacts of living in poverty because of the cost of living crisis are some of those things that we might see in the future. So all of this might sound like a lot. It can be really scary and really worrying. So the aim of these slides is not to bring fear, but it's to raise awareness around some of the difficulties that young people may face. Again, considering that every young person is going to have different personal circumstances and a different situation. For some of these things, you, your friends, and your family may already be experiencing, or it may be something that you're aware of going forward as a risk. So mental health and well-being, I've mentioned a couple of times already, but recent questionnaires and polls have shown that children as young as 10 are concerned and acutely aware of the rising cost of living. So almost 47% of 10 to 25-year-olds are seeing financial pressures as one of the top 5 challenges they'll face in the next 12 months. In terms of housing, rising private sector rent costs that we've discussed may lead to forced evictions and debt. And this means that more young people are at risk of sleeping rough for the first time, as they or their families may struggle to make ends meet. In terms of employment, which you've mentioned, for young people aged 18 to 24, long-term unemployment is still higher than pre-pandemic levels. So particularly in Birmingham, as we can see from that figure. And in education, 1 in 5 18 to 24-year-olds are rethinking going to university. So that's a recent poll that's been conducted, and they're considering going straight into full-time job. Youth services, as we said, will also see the impact of cost of living crisis. This means that core costs for sites and premises, including bills and travel costs for youth workers, will increase, and this will impact the ability to reach more vulnerable young people. And finally, looking to the future, research shows that almost half of those aged 10 to 25 view financial pressures as one of the top 5 challenges they'll face in the next year. So that's quite a worrying sort of figure. And less than half of young people believe they will ever be able to own their own home. So whilst all young people will be affected in some way, either now or in the future, there are some groups of young people who may potentially be greatly affected. And some won't be listed here, but we thought we'd highlight 3 of them just so that we can be aware. So children and young people who are already living in poverty will be at greater risk of these short, medium and long-term impacts. And it's estimated that 500,000 more children will be pushed into poverty next year if wages don't increase, along with the cost of living rises. So this means that more children in vulnerable families will likely go to school hungry, go to bed cold, and those children living in poverty are at greater risk of experiencing long-term health and social impacts. Care experienced young people may be financially independent and managing household bills, and may be more likely to face financial insecurity and have to make difficult choices by themselves around the essential household bills, food and travel. This could lead to difficulty managing budgets and leading to worry, anxiety, giving up on hobbies and interests. They may not also be able to socialize with work and college friends in the same way as they are managing household bills and their household by themselves, which could lead to isolation and that feeling of feeling different. And then finally, young parents. So parents in general experience the rise in childcare costs, but those who are younger parents may have greater struggles over having enough food for themselves and their young children, with the rising cost of food and childcare. So, poor health due to lack of nutritious foods is an issue, and young parents are increasingly under pressure as a result of expectations, a lack of time, and that balance of paid employment and then also providing care for young children, which leads to really difficult decisions to be made. So, what's happening locally? What's the council doing? As it's a really shifting landscape and the impacts of the rising cost of living are changing as well, the council's response is changing. So, we would really recommend checking the council's website, following their social media for regular updates about what is available. So, what we wanted to do was draw together three key points, which is a call to action for bolder, healthier champions. So, firstly, talking about the impact that the rising cost of living is having on young people in your community. This helps raise awareness and reduce shame and stigma around the rising costs. Secondly, connect. So, connect young people to support through web pages and services. And finally, feedback to us where more help is needed so we can continue to improve the support for citizens. So we're going to speak about the first step first, which is talking. Um, and again, talking really helps reduce shame and stigma and helps raise awareness, especially for those people who may not have experienced financial insecurity before this time. So these are some of the conversations that you may be having or will have in the future. Um, so talking first of all to young people, whether it's your friends, family members, people that you study with or work with, you may come across different scenarios. So potentially you've noticed a young colleague who can't afford to top up their phone or pay their phone contract, so is losing contact with their friends. A college friend may be thinking about choosing to get a job rather than staying in education. A young parent that you know might be under financial strain and they're struggling with their mental health or bonding with their baby. You may know a care experienced young person who's living independently and is struggling to work out how to balance the budget when there's not enough money to afford all the essential items. Is somebody you know struggling to afford basic necessities, let alone other things that increase positive well-being? Do you have a friend who may be struggling with food costs but is too embarrassed to use food banks or places that offer hot meals? Do you have a young neighbour struggling with housing, at risk of homelessness or eviction if they're struggling to pay rent? Is a teammate in a local football team stopped coming to practice because they can't afford the travel and extra costs? Um, and finally, is someone at college or anyone you know really living in a household with financial struggles and as a result they're feeling anxious or worried? So, what we would recommend for a bolder, healthier champion to do is to provide brief support in an everyday interaction. So, a brief intervention or support is an everyday conversation which you could use to help somebody. So we would use this model, ask, assist, act. So we've got a couple of examples which may help. So the first one is for non-urgent mental health support. So we would say if someone is at immediate risk of harming themselves or others, that they should immediately go to their GP. But for those situations which are non-urgent and you're having a general everyday conversation with somebody, it's best to start with open questions such as ask, how are you? How are you feeling at the moment? What's been happening for you recently? And then you want to find out whether they'd be open to assistance. So, would you like some more information on services that may help? And then you can act by using the many resources that are on the following slides and signpost them to relevant services. For example, the Mix, which is a support service that can help young people under 25 to take on any challenge they're facing, from mental health to money. Um, and they're available over the telephone for free. Or Pause Hubs in Birmingham offer drop-in sessions for anything related to emotional well-being. A second example we have here is for budgeting. So again, working through the Ask, Assist, Act model, you'd start off with an open question such as, do you have any worries relating to money, budgeting, borrowing, or debt? And then you want to find out if they want or need assistance. So you can advise them that you have some information that may help them budget or may help them save money. If they're open to this, then you can then signpost and support. So, for example, here we've got the Money Helper service, which is a free and impartial money advice tool from the government, um, which is available from web chat or WhatsApp as well. So, the second part is connect. So, connecting young people to support through web pages and services. So this is the second key call to action, and let's hope that the next slides work as a resource that you can use in the future. There are many references here that might help a young person that you know. So firstly, connecting young people to crisis support. So Birmingham City Council's local welfare provision scheme helps vulnerable people in short-term crisis. If you're experiencing immediate problems, you can call that number there as well. And then there's a variety of links there that can help, such as Birmingham and Solihull Women's Aid, St Basil's, which is a Birmingham youth homelessness service for young people, or again, links to food banks. So we know that mental health and wellbeing support is really essential for young people at this time. So there are drop-in sessions at Forward Thinking Birmingham Pause Hubs. They don't need to be booked in advance. There's also Cooth, which offers emotional and mental health support for children over the phone, is available up to 10 p.m. every day. Again, The Mix is a free and confidential multi-channel service for those under 25. And then we've got Young Minds, which is a national service. Acacia is a local group which offers one-to-one and group support for young parents with mild to moderate mental health um, conditions during pregnancy or after birth. And then Pandas Foundation offers similar support as well. So thinking about further connecting people to support when they're young parents. So you might like to signpost them to a nearest children's centre for family support, parenting support, childcare support for parents looking for training or job opportunities. There are lots of stay and play groups all over Birmingham, so they could follow that link to find the nearest one to them. The All Saints Youth Project also offers targeted stay and play for teenage parents. And a young parent may be entitled to Healthy Start vouchers for help to buy healthy food and milk. So this is a sort of miscellaneous page for further local and national support for young people. Birmingham City Council webpage Preparing for Adulthood has a range of support available for housing, health, employment and friendships, relationships and the community. Birmingham youth centres are a safe place for young people to come and meet, so you could advise them to have a look at where the nearest one is. And similarly, a warm welcome space may be closer to a young person. You could advise them to check out National Rail card if they're getting the train and would like to save money on rail journeys. And if you are a youth organisation or work for one, then we'd advise getting in touch with UK Youth to find out more information about how to access support and stay open during this time. There's a range of support on this page for connecting young people to income and debt support. There's Birmingham City Council's cost of living support page. There's national debt advice agencies, and there's also Turn to Us, which is a benefit support service, especially for young people. And there's a range of money advice services there, such as the Prince's Trust, which partnered with Money Advice Service, especially to bring young people support with their finances. So we thought we'd end with a case study. So Sarah is a 25-year-old care experienced young person and a Bolder Healthier champion. She has a part-time job at the local supermarket while she completes her college course. At work, she has made a close friendship with 21-year-old Lucy, who's also a care experienced young person who has recently moved into a flat by herself with a 10-month-old baby. So Lucy says she's very tired and stressed at the moment and the baby's keeping her up at night. But she's also worrying about her bills and food, so that means that she's not sleeping either. So Sarah is able to offer empathy and can say that, you know, she's experienced a similar thing. She's had to live alone and manage bills, and it can be really isolating. She has some online resources which may help, such as learning about benefit entitlement, management, managing budgets and bills, that have helped her. And would she be open to it? So, after hearing about Lucy's financial difficulties, Sarah, as a Bolder Healthier champion, was able to signpost her to benefit entitlement information, manage resources on managing budgets, and also let her know about Healthy Start vouchers for her and her baby. Sarah was able to explore Lucy's mental well-being as they're close friends and they have similar lived experience, and her feelings towards her baby, which have been impacted by financial strain and isolation. And she was able to signpost her to local services for mental health support for young parents, such as Acacia and the children's centres. So the final step is feedback to us. This is a really important step, and we'd really ask you to email Bolder Healthier team on boulderhealthierchampions@birmingham.gov.uk. And this helps us provide more help where it's needed and continue to improve the support for citizens. So this is a final slide which runs through that call to action one more time. So we've got talking about the impact, we've got connecting young people, and we've got feedback to us. And that's the end of our slides. Thank you very much for attending, and I hope that that was useful.